We have seen Indian mothers have been beating all the professional fund managers in terms of how they multiply the money on the back of gold. What do you think about gold as an asset class?
What you said is just spot on. The Indian housewife has actually resulted in the most smartest investor in the world. I really believe that gold will be a very strong competitive commodity and an asset class.
Apart from Indian housewife, there are a lot of economies and nations also which are building up gold. Why they are doing this?
Over the last few years, we've seen developing nations buying a lot of gold, and I think that's to do with the pure strength of what a nation has.
Gold is a one-way rally.
In the last few weeks, the way it's gone up and down has been largely driven by some comments coming out of the leadership of US, which is not sustainable.
Goldman Sachs just came up with a report that they're targeting gold to be $4,000 per ounce. Do you see that kind of a demand?
In 2024, globally, the input on ETF was about $3.5–4 billion. Just in 2025, till we are, is upwards of $19 billion of addition already.
Oh my God. But pure as an investment, how should one as an individual approach gold as an asset class? Welcome to Make Money Matter, India's smartest finance podcast by HDFC Sky. I'm your host, Abhishek Mehrotra. With Akshaya Tritiya around the corner, the gold prices are soaring. The world's chasing what every Indian housewife already knew. Gold never goes out of style. Join me to decode this global gold rush with Mr. Sachin Jain, Regional CEO India World Gold Council, who is here with us. And we have a very interesting topic to discuss today, which is close to everybody's heart. That's gold. Mr. Sachin, very warm welcome.
Thanks, Abhishek. It's an honor and pleasure for me to be here and for us to be here as World Gold Council. Thank you.
So we have seen Indian mothers have been, beating all the professional fund managers in terms of how they multiply the money with the back end of on the back of gold. So, Mr. Sachin, what in this current AI world, what do you think about gold as an asset class and something about it?
I think what you said is just spot on. The Indian housewife has actually resulted in the most smartest investor in the world over the years, and gold being part of social fabric has helped. And while we say that there is a bit of gold in my home, immaterial of which economic strata you're in, which geographic strata you're in, and that has resulted in something very solid that a home holds, and that's India, which is great. Now, in today's world of, as you mentioned, AI, crypto, investments, everything that's happening, what gold has really put on the table is the steadiness, the long-term visionary input that it's given, or the return it's given, and something that's been rock solid. I mean, going back to the times when currencies were valued based on gold, right, and that went away. And I think the world is moving towards a bit of de-dollarization of sorts and stuff. But I think gold is shaping a very important narrative there. And as we get into 2025 and beyond, I really believe that gold will be a very strong competitive commodity and an asset class, and even competitive to any other very newish or a digital one, because the stuff at the back end that's happening in gold is quite transformative. It's taking steps to make it tangibly different, tangibly visible, and so on and so forth. So we're very hopeful that gold, not just with the lens of what it did in the past, but what it'll do from today onwards, will be very very important for the whole world.
Great. I think, so I just got one thing which you just said, and it really is very informative for all the viewers also, that apart from Indian housewife, there are a lot of economies and nations also which are building up gold. So why they are doing this, and what's the thought behind? Because people so far have been talking about dollar bonds and sitting more on dollar denominated assets. But how come this shift, and can you show some light in terms of how this shift has happened over a period of, say, 1-2 years or 3 years?
Sure. So let me explain to you the different areas of consumption of gold. And there are broadly 4 or 5 broad pillars on which gold is consumed. And the reasons why those particular areas slightly nuanced and slightly different. So first and foremost, when you look at India, a large pillar is jewelry, which, as I said, it's a part of social fabric. For everything that we want to celebrate, own, there's a lot of jewelry. And we're a nation of over 4 lakh jewelers. So it's a very important part. So jewelry is one consumption area. And within jewelry, there's, of course, weddings and social occasions like Diwali and Akshaya Tritiya and so on and so forth. So that's one part. Second is the investment demand of gold. And that pans into what we call bars and coins, and also electronic and digital products like ETF and digital gold and so on and so forth. And here, the majority focuses an investor class who buys based on return and a long-term and a short-term longevity of it. The third area of consumption is the central banks, and that's the countries buying. And why they look at buying this is really to increase and build a strength on their currency, on what's happening with geopolitics. And that particular pillar has a direct connotation with what's happening globally in the world from a geopolitics lens point of view. The fourth pillar is the consumption of gold on technological fronts, on various usages of gold for other developments. Like, for example, over the last few years, we've seen a great influx of gold demand on artificial intelligence chips. And as the AI gets more and more democratized, we believe that that lens of consumption, which is, in AI and let's say dentistry and other things, will continue. So I guess this is the broad bit. Now, your question about why do nations buy gold, and the fact is that if you look at the reserves of what US has, they have an upward of about 8,500 tons of gold. That is their reserve. If you look at India, which is now, after a lot of increase, is about 880 tons of gold, which is still a smaller percentage of what US has.
Right.
But over the last few years, we've seen developing nations buying a lot of gold. And I think that's to do with the strength, the pure strength of what a nation has. That's to do with, there's a whole conversation about de-dollarization at some stages that has been continuing and been growing. But I think in the flux of geopolitics and what's really been happening, and particularly we've seen from the Liberation Day, the so-called Liberation Day, as to what's been happening in the world, people and nations will have to stand on their own feet to be not just to operate in that vicinity of your nation, but also to be strong negotiators and stuff. And in that sense, gold is a fundamental strong pillar of a strength of a nation. And we've seen, for example, with RBI and our central bank, in the year 2023, they bought about 17 tons of gold in total. Look at 2024, where they bought upwards of 77 tons, and that buying is continuing. So I guess that's a reflection of, again, one strength of India. And as we've seen globally, last year there was a lot of buying in the first half happening by China central bank, which slowed down in the second half of the year, and now they're back into buying gold like with a full venom.
Oh my God! So there are multiple consumers. The Indian households, or somebody who wants to cherish gold as an ornament. B is an investor. C is all these economies which are wanting to build their gold assets as probably as some hedge towards the inflation or against dollar. And the fourth one is the new generation tech instruments or devices which are coming which requires gold. And lastly, something on which also it's part of dental and all that which you just said. So there are so many consumers about gold. So tell us, look, gold is a one-way rally which has been happening for since so long. And in fact, Goldman Sachs just came up with a report that they're targeting gold to be $4,000 per ounce. That's around 20% from where we are by next year. So do you see that kind of a demand and that kind of a price rise in gold? What's your sense on that?
Well, as World Gold Council, we cannot predict a certain specific price, but what I can give you is certain indications of what's happening with the pillars on those impact on gold in general. Now, let's talk about a few of them. Geopolitics is one, where nations are fighting with nations. And not just like Ukraine and Russia. Now we have conversations of trade wars and stuff. So that will continue. And let's talk about it from a immediate short-term, mid-term point of view to long-term. So I think the world will get completely peaceful. We would love it, but we don't see it happening very soon. So the geopolitics stand continues. Secondly, the fact is that from an investment point of view, the way gold has performed as a commodity and asset class is really attracted the financial investors. To share with you some numbers, 2024, the entire input on, or globally, the input on ETF was about $3.5-4 billion. Just in 2025 till we are is upwards of $19 billion of addition already.
Oh my God!
Now, so this is a complete asset class or the investor class who's getting attracted to gold, its performance, and I think that's one area to look at. Now, when you look at these two in particular, and combined with the global debt that's happening, it is staring at every nation's face, the fundamentals of gold on what gold's requirement should be is very strong. Now, there's another area that has been opened up very recently, and that is that the insurance companies and the pension funds globally are not. I mean, they were not allowed to invest in gold, and in China recently, the government has allowed the investment of insurance companies and pension funds to open up their investments in gold up to 1%. Now, even that 1% is fairly large, but I believe that as this goes up, and they're smart people, they're looking at investments and a portfolio where from a World Gold Council perspective, we always recommend that to having a healthy portfolio, you need to have between 10 and 15% invested in gold.
Right.
Now, at that level of pension funds and that huge investments that they have, I think they're also pragmatically looking at how returns should happen, how their investment should be healthy.
Right.
And I think it's an opening up of a very important pillar of consumption.
Right.
Now, with geopolitics, this new consumption, the AI consumption, all of these things, I think it's going to be very interesting.
Right.
And these are very strong pillars by which I do not see why the demand for gold should go down or up. I mean, should go down.
Right.
Now, to your point, whether it'll be $4,000 or it'll be more, our view is that please look at gold as a long-term investment,
right.
Which is a healthy investment that will stay and is liquid, is a safe haven. All the arguments around gold have really performed very well. And with that lens, we really cannot say it's going to be 4,000, or I mean, as World Gold Council, we love that it goes to that level, but I think it's going to be market forces that will play it out.
Right.
In the last few weeks, the way it's gone up and down has been largely driven by some comments coming out of the leadership of US,
right.
which is not sustainable. But I think what I'm really reflecting on is that the core sustainable pillars of gold are very strong.
As an investment, how one should look in forward? Because in terms of physical gold, when you buy, there is making charges, and then there is a lot of frills attached, and after a point of time, that jewelry becomes redundant. Okay, no, this design is out of fashion or something like that. But pure as an investment, how should one, as an individual, approach gold as an asset class?
Well, let me give you an answer from an Indian lens,
right.
and divide the Indian lens, because I always believe that India is a country of many Indias,
right?
Right from geographical perspective to everything we differ.
True.
And let me answer your question with the perspective of rural and urban.
Right.
Let's talk about rural India. Now, rural India is a very important consumer of gold,
right.
and it's continued to be like that. And the unique aspect about rural India consumption is that they're in quite sense, they're price agnostic, and they look at gold as a saving. And there aren't too many tools, and hence, if you have, let's say, 5,000 rupees a month or 50,000 rupees a month, you say, let me save into gold.
Right.
And hence, when the rural India looks at what's happened to gold, the confidence in their investment, the confidence to continue this is super, super high. Because all that you're
right.
saying is that I had made a saving, and the saving is worth multiples of the savings that I've done.
Right.
Now look at the urban conversation. The urban conversation is exactly what you mentioned.
Right.
It's about how much I put, what's the return, what's the ratios, and so on and so forth. So our conversation here tends to be a little more complicated.
Right.
Having said that, the options still are quite large, and the fact that gold in 2024 has given a result of 31% of return cannot be ignored. It's real time growth in INR terms,
right?
And dollar terms also about 26%. If you look at year 2025, we 3.5 months into the year,
right.
and until now it's already a 21% return that the asset has given.
Right.
And what we're saying that bet on the long term. This could go a little up or down. There could be correction. There could be up. The pillars are very strong. And while all you analysts study, every stock price and the organization in depth before you put a dollar,
right.
Here the fundamentals are very strong and only pointing towards one direction. So why wouldn't you consider? Secondly, it's liquid.
Right.
It's and the opportunity for the consumer is to buy in various formats.
Right.
Like depending where you are, in your whole journey. So, people tell me at times that, is it okay to buy a digital gold or let's say an ETF, which is not holding something
right.
physical.
Yeah.
And it's a journey. It's a journey that India has to travel. It's slightly an easier journey for a younger India.
Right.
It's an slightly easier journey for an urban India. But for India at large, there's a longer journey. So the options of physical gold, and the fact that the government today has made it mandatory by law to have your UHID on every jewelry piece in India,
right?
Which is phenomenal because ours is the only country in the world where when you go out and buy a jewelry piece, you're guaranteed or there's an assurance on the purity. Okay. So, and this got mandatory a few years ago, but the results of that are getting seen now, where a consumer can go in and, you would agree to me that all of us in India have a family doctor, have a family jeweler.
Right.
When we come out, there's a bit of heartbeat is high that whether I've got the real pure thing or not.
Yes.
And it doesn't get validated because when you go to another jeweler, the guy says it's perhaps not worth that much.
Right.
Now the steps by our respectable, our great government have been phenomenal to make this as a law. So what I'm trying to say is that all forms of gold can be taken on with purity, with confidence. Right. And even products like ETF and digital gold are great products because every time you, like ETF, I believe is a great product because it, as you mentioned about making charges and so on and so forth. But the reason why you buy jewelry is also that, you bring a lot of smile at your partner's face and your daughter's face. But even otherwise, if you want to buy it physically, anytime you buy an ETF, it's backed by physical gold, which is a great promise of the product, which I think is at a cusp. Not many people know about that nuance, and once it gets more, I think we need to do a little bit more education on it. I think this particular product is at a cusp to grow hugely in our country.
So is it fair to say ETFs are 100% safe? Gold ETFs are 100% safe?
Well, it's a regularized product. It's regulated by the government, by SEBI, and every time an ETF unit is bought, a unit of gold ETF is 0.1 grams of gold. So you can buy it at about 90 rupees.
Yeah.
So it's heavily, I think, in a small democratized in that manner.
Right.
And, you can have that assurance that every time you bought 0.1 gram or 10 kilograms or whatever it is, or in the range, somebody will be holding that gold for you, which I think is a great sort of promise. Digital gold also is a great product. I mean, the fact is that about 4.5 crore consumers have been consuming this product, and again, democratization to a point that 20 rupees a day to 100 rupees a day and stuff like that, which I think is a great form of bringing gold into the value play in the system. Of course, right now it's not a regularized product, and the regulation, the government is talking to the industry and to take feedback, and I'm pretty sure that there'll be soon some regulation coming on that area as well. Right now, it's a bit of banking on the brand value itself, and people are making a promise. But ETF, I think, is a great product, and it should. I think it's at a cusp. Let me share some numbers with you. 1st of January 2024, the AUM on ETF was about 41 tons.
Okay.
1st of January 2025, the AUM on ETF was 59.5 tons. So you could say that 18 tons in overall scheme of things is not large, but 18.5 tons on 41 ton base is a 45% growth.
Wow.
And to talk about today, which is just less than 4 months into the business, our last numbers that we had were March end, in which this AUM was already at 68 tons. So you already have seen a 9.5 tons addition. So it's been a good one, and I really believe that consumers ease to have their life on their app, on their phone, and the ease to hold their sort of savings and the net worth on phones will get ease, and I think ETFs will become very popular.
Right. So why I like ETFs is primarily you can buy it any smaller amount. I think the minimum ticket size could be you can buy it for 100 rupees also, 2,000, 5,000. You don't have to be really worried about what's per gram cost, and that's one. And when you want to sell, you can just sell at a click of a button. You don't have to think about going anywhere and talking or taking some advice in terms of who is giving me the best rate. The best rates are visible. Go online and sell it.
In fact, on the ETF, I'd like to share with you one more element that we at World Gold Council, we were studying this area of consumption quite closely.
Right.
And while a consumer, some people, particularly in your world, understand ETF completely well.
Right.
We take a step back and say, what can we do about this product? First is, we think that it's too complicated a word called ETF. It's like too, I don't know what I'm getting into. And I think we as an industry need to make it easier for the consumer to get into this category. And maybe if the name was something more simpler, perhaps more people
Digital
would have
Sona
something like that. But we need to attach the ETF into something else and work on that. But the other one was, what can we do that the confidence that this digital product called ETF, which reflects somewhere on my app, has physicality. And one of the steps that we've taken is we're running a small pilot by which we will allow anybody who owns an ETF, for example, if I own 100 grams of ETF and you're a large jeweler, I can walk into a jewelry store and just take that much of gold and transfer ETF to you. And we believe that's going to be quite an important or big step to give that comfort. I mean, we don't think that all the ETF will move into jewelry,
Right.
but it'll give you a very strong comfort to an Indian sensibility on how they should invest. So we should be able to pilot this out within this year, and then perhaps scale it up next year. So great work is happening on that.
Wow, this will address a lot of parents, especially though who have kids at their home. They plan that we want to accumulate gold over a period of time for the kid's wedding. Maybe boy or girl, it doesn't matter, because you need to have gold in the marriages for exchange. And this can be a great product to accumulate gold. And when the gold is accumulated at the time of marriage, I can, pass on my, say, 20,000 units of gold ETFs, and I can buy the corresponding amount of gold. Oh, superb. This is something which I was also not aware at all that this can happen. And I look forward as soon as it gets launches, because this will add more investors. It's a tick box something in terms of gold planning. Mr. Sachin, tell us, what's the role of World Gold Council in gold? Because the gold prices, production is something separate, demand is separate. What is your role there?
Well, World Gold Council is a membership concern of 32 large global gold miners on the jewelry side. But on the strategic side, I'd like to share with you what we're doing. There's a great destination that's been laid out by a respectable Prime Minister, which is Viksit Bharat 2047. And what's going to happen on 2047? I mean, you go, it's almost turned to buzzword where everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
But at World Gold Council, we went behind the scenes to Niti Aayog and to study the whole conversation and what's been written there. And what it says is, of course, that the country will perhaps has the potential to become to a $30 trillion economy if we grow at 9%. So it's a very simple maths.
Right.
If we do not so good, if we grow by 6%, even then we will get to a $23 trillion economy, which is fantastic. What that really means is there'll be 3 to 4 new Indias that'll get added up.
Right.
Yeah. And we're now trying to define what's the role of gold in that destination.
Okay.
If India will be $30 trillion, what's the role of gold in the jewelry market, bullion market, innovation, financial products, government, taxation, all of that element. And we are doing a study, which is a very in-depth study with some futurists, the most important futurists of the world that are trying to shape the narrative of the world into the future. We're getting the industry together, we're talking all of them and bringing the government's view as well to lay out a real clear destination of that's the role of gold in 2047. Okay. And hence a milestone-based approach where what India needs to do by 2040, 2035, 2030 and start doing today.
Okay.
And that's right from setting up, let's say, things like an innovation center, looking at employment in a different manner, artisans in a different manner, making India a jeweler to the world. I mean, today the fact is that we import about 800 tons of gold, give or take up and down, and about 150 tons gets exported. Right. How do we become the jeweler of the world is a doable thing. Right. And we're going to work alongside the government and the industry to make that happen. And similarly, a lot of things are happening on that perspective. But what my belief is that gold will be an important pillar for the growth of the nation. And it will be a united approach in the sense of government working alongside with the industry, both financial and the jewelry side, to make this progress. And I think the next years are what we internally call gold will be the new gold.
Right.
And I think a more energized gold, a more transparent gold, a more technologically savvy gold, a more sort of available at any point of time gold that you guys as investors would love to be a part of it.
And how is the progress? As you say, there are multiple nations who are where you guys are present, I mean 32, 34. So how has been the intake of gold ETF as an investment instrument or as a tool to purchase gold?
Well, ETF is a very big or a very important investment tool in the Western markets.
Okay.
So particularly, let's say US is the biggest market where it's been around for long, and some of the very large giant ETFs sit there. Mm-hmm. And for a consumer, it's a very easy, understandable area of investment that they understand. I mean, although I still believe that the word ETF is still not clear there, but over the years it's gotten popular. We've also seen great growth in Europe and China as well, and India has been the last sort of area where we focused on this. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were some tax ceremonies and other things that the government has rectified this year.
Right.
And I think that purely the love of physical gold and that gold being a part of every home is the base. So I think the issue wasn't that that gold is not consumed. Gold is consumed in our country in a very mammoth manner, but the way of that consumption is changing slowly and steadily. And I think ETF gives that new form of investment, which is transparent, regularized, sits on your, as you said, on a demat. Right. So all those things are new, but I think it's at a cusp to grow massively in our country. because it's a phenomenal product.
I want to hear from you why one should buy gold today.
I think Akshaya Tritiya over the years was a great, historically was a reason to get wealth, happiness and joy at your home.
Right.
And metal was a medium for that. And gold was a great metal to have that. And hence, historically, we've seen that, it's not something today, but over millennia, that families who've bought on this particular day, particularly on this day.
Right.
And today, when they look back at their asset and their investment and what they bought, they would have got that joy, prosperity, happiness.
Definitely.
And that worth is more. So I think there is no doubt in anybody's mind that how gold is performed. And this particular day, it's a great one to do it. My view is that from an industry perspective, the current what we're seeing, the pulse of the consumer, the obsession or the mind space on gold is really, really, really high.
Right.
Yeah. Every time we've seen an Indian consumer for jewelry, we've always seen that whenever the prices go up, the consumer waits and watches. And once it's kind of settled at a certain level, that's when buying happens. Over the last couple of months, we've seen a lot of recycling happen, but recycling of gold to gold. People have not exited the category. It's not that I've come with some of my old jewelry, as you mentioned in the opening, Mark, that designs go away.
Yeah.
But consumers come back with those designs and bought new designs.
Right.
So they've stayed in gold. So the confidence on gold is really high. And I really believe that for what Akshaya Tritiya stands for is joy, prosperity, happiness, and prosperity underlined there. The gold has performed over the years. And this particular day is a very blessed day on gold. We'll see what happens in the next sometime what will be the actual price.
Right.
But definitely go and make that mark. I would say have that semblance of when gold was today highest, and I'm sure that over the next couple of decades, you'll say this used to be the price on Akshaya Tritiya, 30th April 2025.
Right.
Look at the price today.
So India was once a Sone ki Chidiya. Akshaya Tritiya, I don't know how many people will participate, but a lot of Indian investors want to become gold standard. So let's see, Mr. Sachin, what's your view on that?
Well, I think for me, Abhishek, gold will be the new gold. There was a lot of intelligence, vision, capability that we saw in the past that investor of a household had. Right. And that's where gold performed. And I think in the new, current, contemporary, tech, modern world, gold will perform. So gold will be the new gold. And I wish everybody look at gold from a not just today's perspective, but a long-term perspective to what you should own. Thank you.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you. That's a wrap up on this gold conversation. If today's episode make you look at gold a little differently, don't forget to follow Make Money Matters, India's smartest podcast by HDFC Sky. I am Abhishek Mehrotra, and until next time, invest smart and make money matter.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.